Imagine living in a world where your value as a human being was dictated by the color of your skin. It determined where you could live, where you could work, and even who you could love. This, ladies and gentlemen, was the reality of apartheid South Africa. A system that was designed to dehumanize, subjugate, and segregate millions of people based on the color of their skin. I was born in this system, and from the moment I took my first breath, I was not just a child. I was classified as an Indian. And that meant that there were certain laws that dictated my life. The Bantu Education Act dictated the quality of education I could receive. The Group Areas Act dictated where I could live, that being a designated Indian area. And the Mixed Marriages Act dictated that I could never fall in love with or marry a white person. It was a system that was designed to strip you of your dignity. The best beaches and parks were reserved for only whites. This year, 2024, marks exactly 30 years since the collapse of the regime. Yet, the world echoes on with atrocities all over the globe. What apartheid was to South Africa, oppression and occupation, is to so many communities today. My message is directed to you and I, people who live in countries where basic human rights, such as the right to speak, is acknowledged and respected. We have the power, but we must use it strategically. It is not a message that's designed to rouse you into emotional action or designed to make you feel guilty for your choice on whether to act or not, but it is a message of hope to offer you a framework to consider the global issues of today. When I was a teenager, the apartheid regime had collapsed, and since then I was afforded amazing opportunities. The opportunity to study I've grabbed with both my hands. In 2015, I've moved to the Netherlands, and I am now a proud Dutch national and South African national. I was able to marry the love of my life, who happens to be a white male, and a proud father of 2 beautiful kittens. And what I've realized in this time was that my freedom and my ability to live the life I have now is because of you, people who had the right to speak and used it to fight against injustice. The problem we face today is, with this right to speak, there does not exist a method, a framework, to guide us to use it effectively. Instead, what we have is chaotic protests and fragmented messages that lead to stalemates and bad behavior. For this reason, I've developed a model which I call Governance Activism. It's a model that's necessary because the landscape is different. We have the right to speak. We should not use it to shout. Governance activism moves away from resistance and rebellion toward dialogue and engagement. Nelson Mandela understood this. When he was falsely imprisoned for 27 years, he used this time to study the principles of governance. When he emerged, he sought not revenge, but reconciliation. He understood that the most powerful voice was not the loudest, but the most thoughtful. And this is, in essence, what governance activism is all about. In its basic form, governance exists and stands for transparency, accountability, responsibility. And if we frame activism through this lens, we suddenly find that we reframe chaotic behavior and protests into coordinated, structured, unified calls for governance grounded in firm principles.
But how do we then frame ourselves in this model? I propose,
Based on our response to global stimuli and the issues at hand, we could identify ourselves in one of three categories, namely the engaged or the activist engagers. These are some of us that are moved by moral duty and ethics to express our opinions publicly. Unfortunately, that means and includes some of us who engage in disruptive behavior. Second, we get those of us who are the informed observers. We are those that make the effort to filter through information, develop an opinion, but choose not to express this publicly. And lastly, we have the apathetic bystanders. And these are those of us that try our best to stay ignorant of the issues at hand, usually because we are overwhelmed with the mass misinformation, or we've come to believe our voices have no weight, or even worse, we've become desensitized to the issues at hand. Governance activism emphasizes that we all have a role to play. Either we hold leadership positions, and therefore we are charged with the responsibility of upholding governance, or we are stakeholders, where we have the right, responsibility, and therefore duty to call on our leadership to uphold these principles. Now, when we look at the issues of today, we find that the voices are used to shout. Let us consider how we could frame governance activism in reality. In doing this, I will look at an example of the well-publicized recent protests at the University of Amsterdam, which were determined to be disruptive. Now, the students had protested based on a genuine desire for the university to sever ties with institutions that were involved in perceived human rights violations. My opinions on this matter remain objective, but it is a great example to look at how the outcome could have been different under governance activism. Instead of adopting governance activism, students pursued a confrontational approach. They entered meetings and dialogues armed with face masks and a list of demands, therefore leading to stalemates and missed opportunity for genuine dialogue. When we make demands, we create confrontation. We corner ourselves in a negotiation. Instead, had students understood that they are acting in their right and duty to call on management, and management has a responsibility and duty to respond to that call, we find that there is no need to shout, but rather speak about it on a common ground that we all adhere to. Had the students framed their argument in a simple governance model, we, the students, acting as stakeholders and therefore within our duty, call on management to reflect on what we perceive to be a breach of governance principles. Now, this would have shifted the focus from students to management to get them to now publicly respond on how this issue will be addressed. Consider this at a global scale. Since governance exists between institutions, companies, politics, a global call for governance could transcend between institutions and even borders. In today's world of global technology, the ability to coordinate such an action is unprecedented. And a symbolic movement for silence or a call for unified action could transcend mere fragmented protests and disruptive behavior into a powerful mechanism for change. And this is, in essence, what we aim to achieve. But how do we fit ourselves in this model? Well, those of us who identify as the activist engagers, the model encourages you to strip yourselves of emotion. Consider the arguments in terms of governance. Understand the roles of all stakeholders before entering the meeting. Welcome and invite debate. For those of us who are the informed observers, the model calls for us to take the time to continue being informed, to continue developing our opinion, but to do so in the framework of governance. This will aid in understanding all stakeholders and contribute to meaningful dialogue that will drive change. And for the apathetic bystanders, the model urges you to make the effort to stay informed, to filter through bias and develop an opinion irrespective of what that may be. When I was a teenager, I was told by a classmate, a white classmate, that he thought I was filthy because I could not confirm that the dirt washed off my skin after I showered because it was brown. That hurt me quite deeply then. And yet today, short 30 years later, we can all agree of how ridiculous and ludicrous that sounds. I am without words of gratitude to you, people who had the right to speak and used it. The life I live today, the person I love, this career that I followed, is because of those actions. And even though I am free, I struggle to reflect on the horrors of today. Because even if one of these children survive the atrocities of today, and God willing, have the opportunity to stand on stage like me today and ask us, what did you do during these horrible periods? I would say I raised awareness wherever I could. Most importantly, one that I am most proud of, is I used every platform to educate others about it. Given that 30 years is around the corner, and the time to act is now, I ask you, what would you say? Thank you.